Hi, do you know what time it is? It's that time. It's this day in history. June 24th, 2024. Not that really matters, but we have some interesting stuff today. And it only filled one page, surprisingly. It's day 18 in the gym. I've already done my other video for that, but I just got out of the gym, so excuse me. I know that just makes for a great video watching me drink water. Oh well, let's just get into it. So, earliest birthday we have, mind you, all my information comes from Britannica.com. And I don't know if they are the same as the Encyclopedia Britannica, but there's a tie into that here in a little bit. So the earliest birthday here we have it's 1519. Theodore Beza. He was an author, he was a translator, he was an educator, he was a theologian who assisted and then ultimately succeeded John Calvin as the leader of Protestant Reformation centered in Geneva. That's a mouthful. Now, if you've ever heard of the Calvinist Church, we have Calvinist churches here in the United States. I don't know if they're global or whatever, but John Calvin is the founder of that church. And one of their core doctrines, one of their tenets that they believe in is the notion of once saved, always saved. They put a lot of emphasis on this is my understanding, so any Calvinists out there that take offense to anything I say, no offense is off. It's intended. It's not offered. It's just this is just my interpretation, or rather my understanding. So feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But I do believe that Calvinists believe in once saved, always saved, and they're really big on predestination. Like everything has been mapped out. And although to be fair, I don't know how that relates to, or how they reconcile with predestination with free will. So I'll just leave it at that. No judgments or nothing. I'm just. But Theodore Beza, it's his birthday today, and he was essentially the runner-up, as it were, to the founding of the Calvinist movement, church, Protestant Reformation. 1542, Saint John of the Cross. I have no idea who this person is, other than it just says that this person was a Spanish mystic. Their birthday was today. Ambrose Pierce. I want to say Pierce, but it's Bierce. Ambrose Bierce. Bierce instead of Pierce. 1842, Ambrose Bierce was born, and Ambrose Bierce was an American author. 1895, Jack Dempsey, an American boxer. Now, this is like a boxing legend from when boxing really kind of got its foothold in our society. This guy is one of the, I don't want to say founder, but this guy is he's one of the top boxing names of boxing's early formative years, as we know it today. I had no idea that I was still alive, or granted, let me rephrase that. He was still alive when I was alive. He died in 1983, and I had no idea that we both lived in the same time slot there. It's pretty interesting. He was a really good fighter, and he was very, very well known. He's one of the boxing legends. I'll just leave it at that. We fast forward to 1979. Mindy Kaling is an American actress, comedian, and author. She was born on this day. 1987, Lionel Messi, Argentine-born football player. That's exactly what it says. It's an Argentine-born football player. Lionel's birthday is today, 1987. He's a soccer player, right? It's soccer. And you can call me an ignorant American all you want, but it's soccer. Sorry. That's it for the birthdays. We're going to go back to 1497, and I like what they said here. It's 1497, and John Cabot sets foot on North America. And it said he was the first European since the Vikings, because that's completely true. Leif Erikson found North America long before Amerigo Vespucci, long before John Cabot, long before Magellan, long before Columbus, any of those guys, right? Leif Erikson had set foot on Nova Scotia almost 500 years before Columbus had discovered the Caribbean islands. So I like what they said there, that he was the first European since the Vikings. And anyone who knows history, Vikings is actually an improper term to be using for those people of the Scandinavian countries. They were either Scandinavians or they were Norsemen. Viking was a term, not a people. The Norsemen would go on a Viking, and that Viking was the adventure. That was the so for some reason that's been lost in history, and we just refer to them as Vikings but they're not Vikings. They were Norsemen who went on a Viking. So how it properly should have been addressed was John Cabot was the first European to set foot on North American soil since the Norsemen who went on their Viking that led them to discover North America. There. The tribe has spoken. 1795, William Smellie. He died at the age of 55. Now, what's important about him is, and this is where it kind of ties in, I said a little bit ago, he was a Scottish compiler of the first ever Encyclopedia Britannica. So he was a contributor of that, and he was 55 years old, so that means that he was born in 1740. So 1795, he dies at the age of 55, which is kind of older than, it's young by our standards today. Hell, that's only 6 years from now for me. But not too many people lived to be in their 70s, 80s, 90s back then. Some did. If they did, it's because they either they lived well, like they were of means and they lived well, or farmers probably lived a long time just because, well, they were always constantly working the land. So that, I don't know. We fast forward into the 19th century. 1821, South American Patriots led by Simon Bolivar, which I believe Bolivia is named after him. I could be mistaken, but at any rate, Simon Bolivar led these patriots to defeat Spanish royalists. They were near Caracas, Venezuela, at the Battle of Carabobo, and they defeated the Spanish on this day in 1821. 1859, that's the year that my state became a member of the Union. The Battle of Solferino was fought in Lombardy, and it would be the last engagement of the Second War of Italian independence. I don't know who they're owned by before, but I don't know who occupied Italy. I always assumed that Italy had always been its own entity. I don't know. But at any rate, they apparently they fought a second battle, and today is when they um, fought the Battle of Solferino. In 1932, we have the Promoters' Revolution. It was a bloodless coup. They overthrew the king of Thailand. I'm going to butcher this guy's name, but Prajadhipok, Prajadhipok. It effectively ended the monarchy, and it established a so-called constitutional government, which I don't think it lasted very long. Clearly, it didn't, because you would have, you know, what's 40 years later, 45 years later ish, when the fall of Saigon happened, communism took over Vietnam, but then it spread over Cambodia. The Khmer Rouge took over in Cambodia, and they were all communists. And then it just spread. I mean, it spread like wildfire. It was the whole reason why we thought we should be over there, was to contain communism. Otherwise, there'd be a domino effect, which it did happen, because once Vietnam fell, Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, Burma, well, maybe not so much Burma, but they all fell into communism there. And yeah, it is what it is. 1947, an American businessman by the name of Kenneth Arnold. He's flying over Mount Rainier, which is, Washington State. He's flying over Mount Rainier in a small plane, and he sees these unidentified flying objects, and he is credited with being the first person to have ever seen UFOs. And when he described them as being like flying like saucers. And so that's where the term flying saucer came from. Like UFOs, alien spacecraft, or flying saucers. It came from, they basically coined it from him. I hope he got some royalty rights off of being quoted. But apparently he's the first person to have spotted unidentified flying objects that were in the form of flying saucers. And that was on this day in 1947. A year later, on this day, 1948, the Berlin blockade intensified. The Soviet Union would announce to all the Allied powers that they no longer had any rights in Berlin. And it was a contested, basically became a pissing contest. And tensions would raise for the next 12 years. 11 years, something like that. The Berlin Wall came up. The Churchill had given it the moniker of the Iron Curtain. And essentially what the Soviet Union did is they carved up half of Europe. Half of it was theirs, or under their influence, and the other half was Western, or under the influence of the Allied nations, who promoted liberty and promoted freedom, promoted this thing that we throw out so casually called democracy, which it drives me nuts when people refer to our system of government as a democracy, because we're not a democracy. We never have been, we never will be. It is spelled out in black and white in our Constitution that we are not a democracy. We are a republic. We've always been a republic, and there is a difference between the two. Now, do we democratically elect our leaders? Yes, but that does not mean that we are a democracy. The big difference between a democracy and a constitutional republic is that in the constitutional republic, your rights are not guaranteed you by what the state says. That's what a democracy does. Your rights are guaranteed based on The law says that you have them, and the law says that you can never lose them. Because in our case, we have boldly declared in our Constitution that our rights come from God, and that no law, no man, no legislator can take that away from us. And that is the difference between us as a constitutional republic versus democracies like England. They can arbitrarily pick and choose when they're going to remove your rights, and they'll do so in the sake of national security, or they'll do it because it's for your own good. Where the state picks and chooses when it's appropriate for you to have these rights. Our system of government here in the United States it was always set up that we had personal liberty, we had true freedom because God gave it to us, and that no man can take it away. And yet here every year we pass laws, or we send legislators to legislate on our behalf, and they pass laws that keep whittling away and stripping our rights. I mean, it's gonna be dwindled down to nothing eventually, because that's just the way things are. All good things do come to an end. I believe that. I don't think that we were meant to last forever. I believe that too. Although I'd rather not see it happen in my lifetime. But it is what it is. So, sorry, tangent, moving right along. 2010, Australian politician Julia Gillard, she becomes the first elected, she was elected on this day, she became the first elected Prime Minister of Australia. So, yay. That was in 2010. 2022, this was just 2 years ago, and it's still a hot topic, and people are just up in arms over it. But, cooler heads really do need to prevail. So, Supreme Court, here's a case. Case is Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. Okay. SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, they re-examine Roe versus Wade, which was constitutionally protected abortion. Now, before you get all up in arms, I need you to listen, right? And just listen to reason. Here's a little civics class for you, okay? How many branches of government does the United States have? 3. What are those branches? Executive, President. Legislative, Congress, Senate. Judicial, the Supreme Court. Okay. Who passes laws? Who creates and passes laws? Of these 3. That's it. That's the legislative. Who executes those laws? That's the president. He signs them into law, and he enforces them. That's his administration that enforces them. Like, he has the Attorney General, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so who interprets those laws as to whether or not they're constitutional? That would be the Supreme Court. Again, who can set laws? Yeah, that's these guys. So here's the big problem with Roe v. Wade. The big issue with Roe v. Wade is that Roe v. Wade was huge for pro-choicers, right? And I'm not trying to be disrespectful or anything. It was huge for them. The problem is that under our system of government, what they essentially did was they said, this is the law of the land, that abortion is legal. Okay. Who, of those 3, who drafts the laws of the land? These guys. Did these guys draft a law that said that the abortion was legal? They did not. These guys basically said it's constitutionally legal, therefore saying it's the law of the land. They had no legal grounds of doing that. So 2 years ago, the Supreme Court recognized that and said, wait, hold the phone, time out. And what they were doing is they were going through old cases, and they're like, we adjudicated this wrong. It always should have been a states' rights issue. Here we're talking about, Ninth and 10th Amendments here. This was a states' rights issue. What Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, the ruling on that, what that did is, yes, it ended Roe v. Wade, but not in the way that you think it did. What it did was it said this had always been, or this always should have been, a states' rights issue. Meaning, depending on the state that you live in, determines whether or not abortion is legal or illegal. Now, I happen to live on the West Coast where we're very liberal. I am not. But it didn't affect us here on the West Coast. Now, a lot of people raised hell about it and says, oh, you taking away our rights, blah, blah, blah. No, they didn't. Because it's still legal here, right? Women can still have abortions here on the West Coast. Oregon, Washington, California. Now, when this law went into effect, I was living in Kentucky at the time. Kentucky is an anti-abortion state, and they actually had a law passed and ready to implement once the decision went, if it went the way that they thought it was going to go, which it did. Basically, this decision said states have the right to, they have a right on this matter, and they're going to handle it at their end. So, I had a few friends in Kentucky that felt like their rights were being violated because they lost the right to have an abortion in that state, because Kentucky is a pro-life state. All I can say to that is your rights haven't been taken away. You elect those legislators to represent you. Now, there's where the power of the vote comes in, right? If lawmakers draft laws and create laws and basically pass laws that you don't agree with, vote their asses out the next time around they're up for re-election. That's how our democratic process is supposed to work. So, I mean, I'm not gonna, I'm trying not to get too political, but at the same time, me personally, I'm pro-life. But I also recognize I really don't have any skin in the game, right? Like, as a man, I don't have a right to choose. I don't have a say in the abortion process, right? If I have a girlfriend and I knock her up and she chooses to not carry that child to full term here in Oregon, she doesn't have to have my permission to go get an abortion. I don't have a say in that. All I'm saying is that for those who think that the Supreme Court just stripped their rights away, no, they didn't. They basically said that this always should have been a states' rights issue. In other words, the state that you live in, it should have always been their right to choose which side of that the aisle that they wanted to side with. It's their right to choose whether they're pro or against the abortion issue. And the best thing you can do as a voter is you ensure that you vote people into those positions to represent you, and you make sure that you vote for people that share your similar view on that position. I'm not condemning it. I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying that's how the law is supposed to work. That's how our system of government is supposed to work. And this, in my view, this was a step in the right direction, in the sense that there are a lot of court cases that the Supreme Court had upheld that at the time they felt were completely constitutionally legal. And then later on down the line, they're like, there was nothing constitutionally legal about that. And I believe that Roe v. Wade was one of those as well. Because, like I said, the Supreme Court took a stance in 1971 and basically told the whole country, we're making this law. And, so that's not legal. That's not right. They can't make laws. And it's right up there with Obama when he had his Affordable Health Care Act. When the Supreme Court shot it down and said it wasn't constitutionally legal unless it was a tax, and then he turned around and said, okay, with the stroke of a pen, executive order, it's now a tax. That wasn't legal either, and I don't know why the Supreme Court didn't slap him down and say, that's not legal, you can't do that, and shoot that down too. What Obama should have done was taken it back to the Congress and back to the Senate, who'd passed it, and said, okay, we need you to pass it as a tax law. And he knew, I'm sure he knew, that if it had gone around for a second round, it would never have passed. Because, Americans didn't want to pay any more taxes. But that's it in a nutshell. Agree with that Supreme Court decision, Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Org, or not. You can agree with the decision or you can disagree with the decision. But understand what the real ramifications of the decision were. I mean, it wasn't about stripping anyone of rights. It was about empowering the state to choose for themselves which side of that position, or which position they wanted to take on that issue. So that's all. And that concludes today's This Day in History for June 24th. We'll do it again tomorrow for June 25th. It is time for me to go eat and then get to work. All right? So be blessed, take care, and we'll be back at it soon. All right? Take care. Bye.